On this episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive, I put on my fire suit because I am ready for the firestorm that is about to happen. I am selling my Porsche 911, but before I do, I want to share how much it cost me to own this car for 9 months. Stay tuned because it might surprise you. Oh man, is it hot in there. Whew. Let's put out a fire suit on a 90-degree day with 100% humidity. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. And yes, you heard that right. I am selling my Porsche 911. And at this point, you're probably like, Kurt, what the hell is wrong with you? Why would you sell a beautiful 911? And that is a very good question. One that I don't really have an answer for other than this whole channel is built around variety, and that's what I like about cars is variety. And as good as this car is, and I don't really have any reason to want to sell it, I'm going to sell it. Let's get into the numbers, because the numbers are what is important about this episode. I want to cover what you can expect to pay, or an example of what I have paid to own this car for 9 months. And like I said earlier, it's probably going to surprise you. So we're going to be covering every single expense that I've incurred on this car in ownership. And keep in mind, guys, that I have videos for pretty much every single time that I've had to spend money on this car. So any maintenance items that I've done, anything that's broke that I've had to fix, look back at my old videos. If you guys are curious, you can check those out. Let's dive into the expenses. The first expense I incurred on this car was one that you would basically do with any used car. You would change the oil, right? And I was shocked that it wasn't actually as difficult as I thought it was going to be to change the oil on these cars. You always hear horror stories of ridiculously expensive oil changes on 911s, and maybe on certain ones, but certainly not on this one. It was actually the easiest car I've ever changed the oil on, and it wasn't terribly expensive. Now, they do take a shitload of oil. I think it was 9 or 10 quarts of oil, so keep that in mind. But I paid, after doing some good buying on Amazon, I bought some European Formula Mobile 1 and a filter for $67, and I did it myself in like under an hour. Not too bad. The next expense that I incurred was the gear oil. I wanted to make sure that all the fluids were fresh. I wasn't sure, I didn't have the records for the car. I wasn't sure when the fluid was changed last. So I decided to spring for some gear oil. Now, over $100 for buying gear oil for your car and changing it yourself. I would have said under, but it's actually over. The gear oil for this car is actually quite expensive if you want the factory fill. I ended up paying $132 to change the gear oil in this car. And once again, I have a video for that. It really wasn't too bad of a job. Now comes to the biggest expense I incurred on the car, and the only one that I didn't do myself just because, well, really, I didn't have the time to do it, and it was a relatively complicated job. Probably could have done it in my garage, but I didn't. I paid someone to do it, and that was the clutch and the slave cylinder. So I was unfortunate, and the clutch went out under my ownership of my 997, and it cost me $1,924 to replace. Now, that's a lot of money, $2,000 almost, but if I were to say to you, how much would it cost to replace a clutch on a Porsche? I would guess you would say $3,000 to $4,000. At least that's what my initial take was, but it actually wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. So I guess in the end of the day, I got out pretty easy on that one. Shortly after replacing the clutch and slave cylinder, I was feeling really good about the car. I was happy, it was running great. And that was until I came out one day in my garage and tried to start it, and it wouldn't turn over. Sure enough, the battery had gone, and who knows how old it was. And I was sort of scared because I was thinking it's probably some weird size, like weird combination. It's got these like weird venti things on it. It looks expensive, and it's probably going to take some programming to replace and stuff like that. Shockingly, I was able to go to Advanced Auto Parts, which was like a mile from my house. They had this battery in stock that fit perfect. It had the perfect vents, everything I needed, and it was only $129 and didn't require any programming whatsoever. I simply unbolted the old battery and installed the new one. Very much shocked that I could get a battery for my Porsche from Advanced. $129 later, I was back on the road. Now the last part that I had to replace on the car was this door lever right here. It didn't sit flush with the door card itself, and you could just tell it was like broken. You would touch it and the window would go up and down because it's a frameless door. And I was like, this seems like it was gonna be a huge pain in the ass and probably really expensive, right? Like Porsche electronics and whatnot. It was actually only $29 parts to replace this door lever, and I did it within an hour in my garage with very simple tools. It really wasn't too bad. $29 all in to replace this. So that leads me to near present day and my final expense for the car. I decided, instead of just putting this car on Craigslist, because I wasn't really sure how well it was going to do on Craigslist, I would post it on Wren List, which is a very active Porsche forum. And that cost me $17 to do for. I had to buy a year memberships just so I could post the car, which is kind of crazy, but it ended up being a good investment because I had a ton of interest when I posted the car for sale. Now, I paid $30,000 for this car and I posted it for $33,000, expecting to have a little bit of wiggle room. And within 2 days of posting it, somebody put down a deposit and they're going to be collecting it within 2 days, and they are paying $32,000. So when we add up the entire cost of all the expenses that I had, the gear oil, oil change, clutch, battery, door lever, and the Wren List listing, that added up to $2,298 plus the cost of the car, obviously. So $32,298 I was all in, and I sold it for $32,000. So $298 it cost me to own this car for 9 months. That's insane. That's less than 1 month's payment on a BRZ or something like that. It is an incredible value per dollar. If you actually do the math, I drove the car about 3,000 miles. That's a little under 10 cents a mile to drive a Porsche 911. Now, why do I make this video? It's really twofold. It's not to brag, but it's to show you guys that with some smart shopping, you can own some really cool cars for very little money. Now, you might say I got lucky and there weren't any big expenses, but really, I paid $2,000 to replace the clutch and the slave cylinder, and I still ended up okay. Now, the likelihood of the clutch going out under your ownership is probably pretty small. I just got unlucky. But I was able to own this car for $298 even with a clutch job. Now, that's the first thing. Like, you know, don't go and buy a brand new car and spend a bunch of money on interest and take huge depreciation hits once you drive it off the lot. Buy something used. The second thing is dispelling the whole myth that Porsches are very expensive to own. And once again, I got hit with the $2,000 bill while I owned the car, but I was able to recoup basically most of that cost when I sold it. So I was able, as a very casual mechanic, to do everything I needed to on this car that was really more minor, and then leave even a clutch job up to the professionals and still end up okay. The oil change, guys, it was the easiest car I've ever changed it on. You know, the gear oil was very simple as well. Replacing this door lever, there's so much information on these cars, you can very easily do it yourself and you don't even have to be a pro mechanic. So that's really what I want the takeaway from this video to be, is that you can own cool stuff for little money if you shop smart, and also just know that it's not as expensive as you think to buy a cheap 911. So that leaves us with what's next once I sell this car. Well, I'm definitely going to be replacing it with something cool. You can count on that. So stay tuned, but I'm not giving it away just yet. I have a couple cars in mind, but I'm going to keep you guys hanging. But I would like to hear what you guys think about it in the comments below. Let me know what you think would be an interesting progression from this car. Something that I haven't owned before, if you've followed along my channel. That's what I want. I want something different. Porsche 997 is a wonderful car. Like I said, I don't really have a reason for getting rid of it. Buy one, they're great. It's just time for me to move on. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching. As always, this has been another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. We'll see you next time. And guys, before you go, there's actually gonna be one more video on this car before I sell it to the new owner. So stay tuned for that one coming up. This one was about how much it cost. The next one is gonna be what it's like to own a 911 for 9 months.